It was said that a nation divided cannot stand. Yet over the last several years, it is all over the news that there is more and more division. At the end of the day, we are all Americans, and we must come out of our echo chambers and learn or even relearn how to interact with people we disagree with in measured civil discourse, not aggressive rhetoric. In order to continue this great experiment, the group Braver Angels has stepped in not just to moderate, but facilitate conversations across this divide, and help us find the better angels of our nature. Today we are joined by Bill Doherty, co-founder of Braver Angels, to talk about how we got this way and where we can go. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or member municipal leaders. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be with you.
So first things first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Braver Angels?
Yeah, well, so myself, I live in Minnesota.
Okay.
I am a professor of family therapy at the University of Minnesota. And about 6.5 years ago, co-founded Braver Angels, which is a national nonprofit that's dedicated to try to depolarize this country and kind of heal the divide that has become so toxic among Americans.
And why did you feel the need to create an organization like Braver Angels?
Well, there wasn't some big strategic plan. Right after the 2016 election, two colleagues of mine, David Blankenhorn from New York City and David Lapp, who lives in Southwest Ohio, were on the phone talking about how people in their neighborhoods, their communities were feeling about the election. You can imagine how differently they were feeling.
Yep.
The world was ending versus morning in America. And they decided on the spur of the moment, kind of impulsively, to get 10 Hillary Clinton voters and 10 Donald Trump voters together for 13 hours over a weekend in Southwest Ohio and see what happened. And they asked me to lead it. And so I said, oh, what the heck? And so it was a very powerful experience. And honestly, I thought that would be the end. I mean, we did this. We showed it could be done once. But that group didn't want to stop. We had a reunion. We just decided to keep going. So that's how it happened.
That's the genesis. So this might be a simple question, but obviously there's a complex answer. Why are we so divided?
Oh boy. Well, let me just describe it first. The division is called affective polarization, and that is, it isn't so much about issues, it's about how we feel about each other. That people who differ from me politically are alien to me. I don't like them, I don't trust them, and I think they're ethically compromised. And that has been going up increasingly in the United States for the last 35 years or so. So that's the what. It's from both Congress down to families, and school boards and everything in between. And the why is, the whys are always hard. But there are seem to be lots of factors. There's globalization and the loss of confidence in many working folks that they have a future. A generation, each generation of Americans thought their kids would do better than they did, and that's really gone away. It's about social media and the kind of toxicity that's out there, that people can fight each other on social media in a way they never would face to face. Multiple news sources, so people get their information based on their own particular biases. So we don't have a common information base. Gerrymandering means that most members of Congress, the threat to their survival in Congress is not from the other party, it's from the extremes in their own party.
Yep.
And we could go on and on. Many, many factors. Declining in social trust in this country. We have less trust in social institutions. So we're more at risk to have politicians demagogue us.
Yeah. So you mentioned, this has been going on for 35 years now, but in our intro, we actually referenced, and some listeners might have caught on, Abraham Lincoln, who in his first inaugural address referenced our better angels.
Yes.
Shortly after that, obviously, we got into the Civil War. So
Yes.
is this something that just happens on a cyclically? Is this something that, or is this something new that is happening now?
Well, historians are saying we are more divided now than we have been since the Civil War. So, this we're seeing a real spiking again. And I don't know about cycles. I think it's too easy
Mhm.
to point to those.
Yeah.
I think the Civil War was so much about slavery, and now that's not slavery,
Mhm.
but we are in an era of where the sense of the group, the sense of the we, has broken down. Not only here, and
Mhm.
that's part of what we should look around the world. Look at Brexit, for example.
Mhm.
Look at in Canada. There's a political party in the Western provinces that wants to break off from Canada. Good mild mannered Canada,
Mhm.
Scandinavian countries.
Mhm.
So there's this worldwide phenomenon that's going on that I don't know if it's cycle doesn't seem like
Yeah.
an adequate way to explain it.
So similar causes and factors across the world, or is this something that we're exporting?
Oh, well, no, it's been going on in other places. I think social media is all around the world. Okay.
Mhm.
And maybe you could say we exported that, but that is what political scientists call social media, is calling it an accelerant
Mhm.
of conflict and polarization. You can spread misinformation, you can spread conspiracy theories, you can denigrate your opponents, lie about them, and it'll spread. We call viral.
Yeah.
It used to be in another generation you actually had to run off mimeograph falsehoods
Yeah.
and put them in the mail, or a telephone tree, right? And now you just have to click.
Yeah.
So I think social media is an accelerant all around the world of forces of division.
And are we really more divided, or are we just hearing the kind of the outliers and the loudest voices through social media and the kind of that news cycle? Is that what gets the attention?
It's we are more divided by all of the standardized measures that political scientists use. It
Yeah.
isn't just people are telling us but the thing is though, we're not that divided on policy. There have been
Hmm.
times in our country, go back to the 1930s, we had a communist party and we had
Hmm.
neo-fascists like Hitler. We had more powerful policy divisions. Um, Now it's more of how we feel about each other, the way in Braver Angels, we talk about the four horsemen
Hmm.
of polarization: stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, and contempt. Not only for the politicians we don't like, but for the family members we don't like, for the
Yeah.
friends, the ex-friends. Um, there is something happening. I look
Hmm.
at school boards; they used to be boring meetings, right? And
Yeah.
look at what's happening there. So there is something happening. It isn't just hype.
So one of the interesting things looking at your website, we want to get into is that you don't necessarily want to get people to back away from their views,
Yes.
but to learn how not only to express their views in a way that respects listeners, but also to learn how to listen to people you might not agree with.
Yes.
This doesn't seem like a radical revisionist way to approach politics. How did you get to this point, and why does it matter?
Well, we're really clear. We don't take sides about whether reds or blues are more correct.
Hmm.
That disagreement and debate is part of democracy, and it's been there from the beginning. Just think about
Yeah.
the role of the federal government. Okay,
Hmm.
that was there with Hamilton and Jefferson, so it's a perennial debate. We're interested in not changing people's minds about issues. We're interested in them changing their minds about each other.
Hmm.
Okay, and one of the ways you do that is to enter conversations where you disagree with respect, without ridicule,
Hmm.
where you actually try to understand the other person. You don't label them, and so that's the way. And if you listen to them, if you
Hmm.
listen to where they're coming from, instead of just trying to come up with something to refute them, you actually find out where you have some common ground.
Yeah. Um, One reason we bring up the specific concept of Braver Angels is because you're doing a workshop in conjunction with CCM called Managing Difficult Conversations with Constituents. Can you tell us about that workshop?
Yes, it came out of work we did here in Minnesota with county commissioners and city council members and mayors, and where they are dealing with a
Hmm.
level of vitriol, if you will,
Yeah.
a level of tension that uh, from people who agree, people on their own political side
Yeah.
who think they're not radical enough, let alone people on the other political side. And so the level of frustration that they're experiencing. And so we designed this workshop that basically says we all have to upgrade our skills
Hmm.
in an era of low trust and high polarization.
Yeah.
And so it's a workshop that teaches some principles and some skills for disagreeing better in a polarized era.
So one really great part in some of the materials that you shared for this workshop beforehand, can you tell us a little bit about the expectations that folks need to abandon?
Yeah, well, one of them say is that the other person will use the same skills. Okay, in other words, if I decide, Matt, I'm going to really try to listen to you
Hmm.
and not just counter you, I should let go of the idea that you're going to do that back to me. Okay, I may have to do more of the heavy lifting here.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so that's an example of one, and the other is that the skills that we teach at this point are skills for one-to-one and small group conversations. They're
Hmm.
not the skills for how do you hold a big public meeting and keep it
Yeah.
from being hijacked.
So obviously this information is going to be available to CCM members. But is there a way for the general public to find resources on this topic from Braver Angels?
Sure. Well, braverangels.org is our website, and we have e-courses
Hmm.
that are, e-versions of our standardized in-person or live workshops. They're really, quite valuable. We have one on skills for bridging the divide that teaches
Hmm.
some basic skills. We have one that's pretty fun that's on families and politics. And
Okay.
so it asks you to identify, who's the family gladiator in your family,
Okay.
and the defender of the righteous way. And then how do you communicate with them in a way where you're not trying to change them? So that's an example of we call the prime directive.
Hmm.
Don't try to change your family member, okay?
Okay.
Because that's not going to work. People will go to the grave before they let a family member change them, okay?
Hmm.
So enter into conversations with family and others with these expectations that you're going to listen in a way that they feel heard, and
Okay.
you're going to speak in a way that they may be willing to hear you.
It sounds like something that would be quite useful to people coming up on Thanksgiving and the holidays here.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
So there's several types of disagreements. You can agree on a problem, but not the approach. You can disagree that there's problems, or you can just be
Yeah.
contrarian for the sake of being contrarian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I can see how you can be constructive in the first case, but how would a person who took this course handle someone who absolutely disagrees or just disagrees just to be difficult?
Well, if somebody is disagreeing to just be difficult, we have skills for
Mhm.
difficult moments. Okay. If somebody you feel is not engaging in a good faith conversation, then we have what we call exit skills.
Mhm.
How do you exit the conversation?
Okay.
Because it's not a conversation. But doing it in a way where you do not um, act towards that person the way they're acting towards you. So if somebody is being nasty and obnoxious, calling you names,
Mhm.
how do you exit from that conversation without calling them name and be obnoxious to them? So, for
Yeah.
example, you can say, I think this conversation isn't useful anymore, so I'd like to move on. Okay.
Yeah.
If somebody were to verbally attack, verbally attack your integrity,
Yeah.
we one of the things you can say is, Matt, you just crossed the line.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm not going to defend my integrity, so we're done with the conversation. But you see what
Yeah.
I'm doing? I'm not saying you're a liar,
Yeah.
you're this. So the principle for the most difficult moments is neither be a perpetrator nor a victim.
Okay. That's a good point. That you can defend yourself without having to attack someone else.
Right. Right. This isn't working here. Okay. What you're saying isn't working for me anymore. And I want to end the conversation. And then the subtleties of, see, some of this comes out of my work as a marriage counselor.
Okay.
You can call a timeout on the conversation, but your spouse will say one more thing. They will always say one more thing.
They're always getting that last little.
Exactly. They will get the last thing in. So let them say it, and then then don't respond. If they say, "Well, you're the one that's being obnoxious, not me," don't just say we're done. Don't get into it with them. It takes two to escalate.
Yeah.
So when you think about a political conversation that escalates, it takes two to do that. You never have to escalate.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important. We talk about marriage, but also public meetings and this kind of stuff now that we see on TV where people get into, verbal or even physical fights sometimes at these public meetings.
Yeah.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. To circle back to the discussion from earlier, the idea that every once in a while our nation grows apart means that every once in a while our nation comes together too. Post World War II, post 9/11 comes to mind. It seems that the divisions weren't quite so divisive. Do you have hope for the future? Do you think that a new era of unity is around the corner?
Well, hope is a choice, okay, not a feeling. And so, yes, I have hope. And sometimes, just like I'm a therapist, sometimes people don't start to change until things get really bad.
Yeah.
And they're really bad. I once thought maybe a pandemic could bring us together, like an external, the virus could bring us together. Well, we learned about that. Then I thought, hopefully this isn't tested. If we discover they're extraterrestrials, who are threatening that. No, I no longer think that. On day 2, it would get caught up in the red-blue divide. You're being too soft or too hard on the ETs. Okay. So for now, we're kind of mired, but because we're so stuck, almost everybody believes we have to lower this rancor. And the one thing Americans agree on is we're too divided.
Okay.
And so that's good. It's like married couples saying our relationship is in trouble, we need help. We're getting closer to that. But what's countering that is what some people call conflict entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And this is through the proliferation of media, including social media. We have people who make their living off dividing us. And I think we have to start naming that and resisting that.
So it's talking about the pundits that are on TV that are there just to take that one side and rile people up.
It's how they make their living.
Sounds like you are hopeful that we can come together just because the situation has gotten so out of hand. When we do come together with someone on that, perhaps that one common issue, how do you then translate that into agreeing on other things?
Well, if you have an experience of agreeing on something. So, for example, in Braver Angels, the last 18 months, we've tackled the issue of trustworthy elections. The whole thing about was the election stolen. And the way we've done it is to have about 25 what we call common ground workshops, where we bring reds and blues together, people whose concerns are different about the elections and whose beliefs about the facts are different. And we lead them through a series of exercises, the goal of which is to find common ground. And they did. And so a group just got together, recently, to a leadership group, a half red, half blue, to distill out 20 agreements on policy. And that's going to be written up and shared with the country and hopefully, create a conversation because it was put together by both sides.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that can give us hope. If we could do it on elections, maybe we could do it on immigration, and maybe we could do it on healthcare, but you have to start somewhere and build relationships of trust. And I facilitated that meeting
Yeah.
on bringing together these reds and blues, and they had worked together. They had built relationships of trust. They listened to each other. They made changes because they wanted to have a document that everybody could unanimously agree on.
Yeah. And were these Reds and Blues, were these people that knew each other before this
No,
thing?
no, no. These were not buddies before. They came together because they're worried about the country.
Yeah.
And of course, if we have no confidence in our electoral system, either because you think there's a lot of fraud or you think people are excluded, right? So that's the kind of red-blue divide. And what happens is, the way the arguments go is the election was stolen. No, it wasn't. People don't have access. Yes, they do. Boom, 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 boom.
Back
And
and forth.
so we have a process whereby you listen carefully to other people. You talk and you hear them share what their concerns are and where those concerns come from, like in their life story.
Yeah.
Okay. So an African-American man in the group said that his grandfather was not allowed to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. And then somebody else who, in his family history, there was a strong belief that they lived in an area where there was fraud in the election. And remember that old joke about in Chicago, vote early and often?
Yep.
Right? That's not fun. That's not funny to people who have a serious concern that it would take 55% of the vote in big cities for a Republican to win. And that's a deeply held multi-generational belief. And liberals could say, well, silly, and nobody's found it. And well, you have to deal with the belief.
Yeah.
And then you have to design some agreements, some policy agreements that try to nail down this concern about like ballot harvesting and and so it's if for you it can lead to fraud, even though you can't necessarily quantify that.
Yeah.
And I say, well, where's the evidence that it has? Where are we? Okay. And so you come up with, how can we design an electoral system that will make you more confident that nobody's tampering? And then on your end, what are you going to support that will eliminate some long lines, and how people who are in nursing homes vote if they can't go there? So the give and take is what we know how to do.
You mentioned that some of these things are multi-generational. Is there, in what you've studied, differences between the generations? Are some people more divided, or is this kind of across the spectrum?
Yeah, there's a lot of division right now across the spectrum. What I can tell you, younger people like high school students who aren't that political yet, they're more open, and we've been doing more work with high school students. They're more open. A lot of college students don't have a clear red or blue identity, so they're the younger people in that way are more open. But here's the scary thing in terms of social trust, the belief that most people can be relied upon to live up to their word and do the right thing. That has gone down in every generation since the Great Generation. So the Gen Xers are less trusting than the Boomers, and the Gen Zers are less, the Millennials are less. So the younger generation don't trust as much as the older generation.
Don't trust the government.
They don't trust the government, and they don't trust other people in general.
They don't trust each other.
Yeah, other people in general. The questions on the surveys going back to the 1960s is, how much do you think most people can be trusted? Most people will do the right thing or live up to the word. There's been a steep decline. Plus, trust in government, in the media, in religious institutions, in the courts, you go down. I think only firefighters are left.
Yeah.
People trust the fire department, but that's about it.
It's really fascinating. Well, Bill Doherty, thanks for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be part of this conversation.
And if someone at home wants to learn more about Braver Angels, where should they go?
Just Google Braver Angels. By the way, you mentioned Better Angels, the Lincoln phrase. Our original name was Better Angels for the Lincoln phrase, the Better Angels of our nature. But somebody else owned the trademark, and they threatened to sue us. So we changed it to Braver Angels, which we kind of like, actually.
So I wasn't off with the Abraham Lincoln there. Just
It was parsed. We started with A, but in this age we live in now, it doesn't necessarily, people fight about names. But Braver, so just Google Braver Angels. We have lots of lots of material online.
mhm.
Everything we offer is free. We don't charge for
Okay.
anything, any workshop, any material, nothing. But people can join as a member for $12 a year.
Okay. And what would joining do?
It would allow you to contribute to participate in what we're
Mhm.
doing. We have member meetings. You're kind of on the inside scoop of what's coming down and what's happening.
That's really great stuff. Well, again, Bill, thanks so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
We'd like to thank our guest, Bill Doherty. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for our CCM chat series on our YouTube page.